There will be consequences? There wasn't really much at all.
Those were up, and they did.
We're smart, and my...
He told me enough.
No, I.
Here's Chuck.
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I'm here with a brand new movie review. And this movie review is going to be for a sequel to a film I recently just reviewed, and it's the second installment of this trilogy. This one came out in 2018, and this one is going to be for none other than 2018's The Equalizer 2, which is once again directed by Antoine Fuqua, and once again stars Denzel Washington as Robert McCall. So what's the plot of this movie? Well, former Marine and Defense Intelligence Agency spy Robert McCall now lives in a diverse apartment complex in urban Massachusetts. He's working as a Lyft driver and assists the less fortunate with the help of his friend Susan Plummer. McCall anonymously travels to Istanbul by train to retrieve a local bookstore owner's daughter who was kidnapped by her father. He also helps Sam Rubinstein, an elderly Holocaust survivor who is looking for a painting of his sister. The two siblings were separated when they were transported to different camps by the Nazis. But the painting is found to be auctioned off, and Sam cannot prove that he owns it. After discovering that the apartment courtyard has been vandalized, McCall attempts an offer from Miles Whittaker, a young resident with an artistic but troubled background, to repaint the walls. One day, Susan and DIA operative Dave York, McCall's former teammate, are called to investigate an apparent murder-suicide of an agent and his wife in business. When McCall's longtime friend is found dead, he sets out for vengeance once again. So, how was this film made? Well, around February 2014, 7 months before the first film was released, it was announced that Sony and Escape Artists are planning a sequel, with Richard Brink penning the script again. Then, early October 2014, Antoine Fuqua stated that there would be a sequel to the film while audiences and Denzel Washington wanted it. He said it was an interesting character and that the sequel could have more of an international flavor. Then in April 2015, Sony officially announced a sequel, with Washington returning to his role as vigilante Robert McCall. Fuqua's returning was not yet confirmed. Then September 2016, producer Todd Black revealed that the script of the film was complete and that Fuqua would return to direct, with shooting set to begin in September 2017. Then on August 21st, 2017, Pedro Pascal was cast in an unspecified role, and 2 days later, Melissa Leo and Bill Pullman confirmed their reprise roles in the first film as Susan and Brian Plummer. It is reported that the film will be produced by Jason Blumenthal, Black Washington, Steve Tisk, Mac Newfield, Alex Siskin, and Tony Eldridge. Then on August 24, 2017, Ashton Sanders joined the film to play a character who comes to consider Washington's McCall a father figure. Then in March 2018, it was revealed that Sakina Jaffrey has been added to the cast. Principal photography on the film began in the South End area of Boston, Massachusetts on September 14, 2017, and filming even took place in Lynn Shore and Lynn, Massachusetts, the PowerPoint Bridge in Duxbury, Massachusetts, and Brant Rock in Massachusetts, and the final action scene was filmed there. Interior scenes were also filmed at a studio in Canton, Massachusetts. So, after the film was officially completed, shot, and marketed, The Equalizer 2 went on to be released into the United States into theaters on July 20th, 2018 by Sony Pictures. When it came to the reactions, it received just mixed reviews from critics. Critics praised Washington's performance in the film's action sequences, but they criticized the pacing and the number of subplots. Nevertheless, though, that didn't stop the movie from being a commercial success like its predecessor, because it grossed $190 million worldwide on a production budget of $62 million. Now, as for my reaction, well, I officially saw this movie for the first time this week, and how was it? Honestly, it was a bit of a letdown compared to the first film. I mean, it wasn't terrible and still somewhat good, but this one just seemed like it lacked the energy and epicness of the first film. Robert doesn't really get too much struggles here, and it dragged on a bit slower than the first movie did. Usually gone are the nice friends whose lives our hero moves through, and here are the disjointed episodes with no payoff or connection. Gone is the home improvement store fight in the rain, where our hero picks off baddies with a variety of tools as the sprinkler system rains down. Here's just a boring, nonsensical fight in a storm. But let's just say the good things first. As mentioned earlier, the start of the movie is great, but it just slows down as it progresses, and a large section of viewers can get bored as majorly action movies are very fast-paced, but considering the type of plot, we should give that consideration to the director. The Equalizer 2 just has less action and less fighting than the first, but it was no less good. That just made it less good. It had a more serious and somber tone, and was definitely more cerebral. Robert McCall's on the trail of those responsible for his friend's death. He had to use some shrewd investigative skills to discover whether or not her death was intentional and who the killers were. While Robert was dealing with that, still had the time to do some cleanup in his hometown of Boston. I mean cleanup in every sense of the words. And the movie starts off with Denzel incognito on a train, beats up some bad guys, and saves a little girl. So I'm glad he's gone back to helping people. He doesn't work for the hardware store this time. Now he's a Lyft driver, and he's still helping along the way. And his friend from the last film, Susan Plummer, is killed in this movie, and Denzel's going after the bad guys responsible. That's pretty much the plot. He still does some killer moves, and once again, there's a Home Alone type style final confrontation like the last film. Whereas the last film, the lead character feels a little more identifiable, seeing him work a decent job, sit in a cafe with his books, and often sitting alone at home as the clock ticks by. Here he's just constantly being dragged into bad situations to move the plot forward. He does pay this kid in the movie to paint some walls, which does become intricate to the plot later, but I guess the replacement for Chloe, well, to be fair, this guy is just kind of the replacement for Chloe's character in the last movie. All he seems like he really was. So most of the time, this movie's just not really an action film. It feels more like a steady thriller. The action is just quite effective every time it's used. If you need action, what's here is fine, but it's the character of McCall in this quest to meet justice that intrigues. McCall is so complex, and Washington is so nuanced into bringing him to life that gives the decent but off-used storyline. It might have been so much less without Washington's skills. It works just fine here. It made a lot of movies to seem much more compact. Denzel Washington's definitely a good actor in this. We all know this. He still has a good performance in this movie. He definitely has the ability to play these hardened, battle-scarred, eternally struggling super soldiers that never fails to impress. And I do enjoy his intensity with playing these characters. And with the fitness delivery, Denzel's ability to deliver his dialogue is magnificent, bringing inspiration and motivation into many. And a nice balance was definitely... Now, Ashton Sanders, the guy who plays that kid Miles, he achieves his role quite well. Not quite as motivational, but certainly capturing his struggle artist motive of his character. A nice balance is struck between these two, and establishes a dynamic relationship between these two. The rest of the actors do fine in their parts, but it's these two that hold most of the screen time. It's just one of those action films that's just kind of grounded to the realm of reality. Equalizer 2 has some tense moments to spice things up still, but it doesn't resort to flashy special effects and physics-defying moves to do it. Mostly. It kind of sticks to tactic combat, utilizing skills on the mind to play a deadly game that deals the justice you want. While they're limited through much of the movie, the endgame is where strategy is really capitalizing on it. In addition, if a player gets injured, they don't recover quickly, so that helps keep things exciting. And the movie does somewhat take off at the halfway point near the climax, and taking the steam to push them into the action thriller component. Once the movie hits into this realm, it does get a little more interesting and engaging, amping up the tension and trying to keep you guessing what will happen next, and it doesn't actually feel like the movie's going to be dragging by this point. And I like that the movie surprisingly opens up Denzel's character, help explain more of the backstory that molded him into the super assassin hiding behind the chiseled features. I did enjoy learning more about the central protagonist's haunting past, and also in seeing him evolve, so he may overcome his struggles and attempt to move on to something else. It fits well with the movie series, and so has potential any future installments they would definitely try to make, and they did make a third and final one. And as for the main antagonist, surprisingly, the antagonists in this movie, while the first film's still better, the antagonists were just not fleshed out well. Here, the antagonist feels more fleshed out and his motives are made clear, but I still find myself having the same issue with the first film's antagonists. He even just straight up kills Susan Plummer in the beginning of the movie, which was just an obvious attempt for the movie to get us behind Denzel's character. And she pretty much gets the Alien 3 cliche. So yeah, they Alien 3'd Susan Plummer in the second movie. I'm sorry, but that just did not work for me. And I don't know why they thought it would. I mean, yeah, then again, we barely remember her from the first movie, and she's still barely in this one, so what was even the point of her character in these movies? This should have been more focused. I mean, I do understand the idea behind this. The Equalizer does good for people and restores the balance of his everyday actions, but sometimes he just has to do this with force and vengeance. This adds a lot of the side stories that barely contribute to anything besides the idea just mentioned. And the cinematography is quite good with nice scenery from Turkey and Belgium, which certainly makes the movie more interesting, and the stormy scenes from a small coastal town are also impressive. And the main plot is quite ordinary for this genre, with this predictable twist and a long stretch of imagination and some loose ends. Pedro Pascal's motives are, for example, though, are never explained. And the subplot involving Ashton C is just kind of confused, as this confused young man that just looks a bit dry, but indeed helps the movie to balance in pace and gives instant depth to character development. Otherwise, the whole project would have turned to an unbearable action-packed, mindless junk sequel. There's good acting style. Denzel Washington carries the story almost by himself. Here, and now, Robert and Miles, their subplot, like I mentioned, it was fine. But it just doesn't really have... But I feel like him and Alina's subplot, their brief scenes in the first film, they felt better written. Here, like, it's just we need to have this teenager in the film that then one day literally abandons his whole job of painting the walls to join this army of thugs, and then Robert pretty much follows him there and raids pretends to be his dad, like, son, we're going home now, and like, is this the lifestyle you want? Being with thugs? Being with thugs or stuff, and the argument was pretty well done and acted. Well, and I mean, and the first opening scene was actually pretty epic. And actually gory. Because I definitely remember, like, sorry guys, I watched this movie last week, and this was the only time I've seen this movie, so sorry if my memory feels a little faded, but I try the best I can to remember what I've seen. What I've seen, I think apparently I already apparently breaks the guy's fingers in the opening scene. Like, it's like this hotel review thing. It's out. Then he of course saves that little girl, and he's now a Lyft driver. And then it would make sense because the hardware store in that fight in the last film got destroyed. So I guess he can't really work there again. He's probably now has to reveal his past to them. But he's now a Lyft driver. And he's taking people. He's like driving people certain places now. He's still living in Boston. He's now doing good for all of Boston. He's now known as the Equalizer. I mean, the weirdest thing is, though, it feels like a sequel, but the thing is, they just don't really seem to mention much of the first film at all. We never find out they never mention Alina or Terry at all. Like one mention could have been fine. I mean, they could have just did that, but we just never find out what happened to her after this movie. We know she's gone on to a better life, but at least one reference to the first one could have been nice. Because technically Terry was kind of the reason why Robert McCall went back to his old CIA lifestyle, why he's now kind of the Equalizer. Like, Terry's health situation is what got him back into this life and deciding to clean up Boston in the first place so they could have a little reference there and just not act like she didn't exist. So now we get to all the bad things of the sequel and just why it feels a bit inferior. It does help get the movie established in that Robert Hood-like atmosphere, but But most of the time, this movie just drags down for me. The first one was 132 minutes long. This one's 121 minutes long, but it doesn't really feel like 121 minutes. It literally feels like 132 minutes, while the first one felt like 121 minutes, so it shouldn't be the other way around. The Equalizer 2 just needs some major pushing to get us to the good stuff, and a few action appetizers to try and hold your energy. It's not the slowest opening, but the ending could have taken some time to trim the fat and help tighten the story, so we could have taken some unnecessary things out of the movie. And it's just easy to figure out what's going to happen here, because there's a lot of predictable moments. Not much more I can say about that, but the trailers have done a decent amount of revealing. For those that haven't seen it should have no trouble figuring this out. And realistic as it may be, the action is still not quite as spiced up as it was in the first one. And impressive as tactical combat is, the movie still doesn't quite have all the energy and excitement I usually like in a film. And usually, when I see an action film, I'm hoping I'm seeing fast-paced gunplay with lots of boom. There's some of that in the beginning and ending scenes, but not much else for the rest of the film. Most of the movie's just kind of Robert bonding with this kid named Miles. No, I think that's his name. It's Ashton S's character. Just usually going around Boston most of the time. The revenge stuff, like the fight sequences and the revenge stuff doesn't really happen until like the climax. I still didn't mind the slower combat, but I would have liked to see more of it. Because there's huge gaps between short-lived battles that make this that make for a slower movie. Although I guess if you maybe did like the new Jason Bourne film, that would probably be no problem. If you like films like this, it probably wouldn't be a problem though. My least favorite aspect though, it's definitely the story. Now, Equalizer 2's story is not terrible or the worst thing ever. I just didn't think it was the most groundbreaking thing ever. The opening just feels like a charity meets Robin Hood approach. It's a sort of toned down death wish to establish the setting, and after that, you kind of struggle to appreciate the four subplots interweaving with each other to try and craft an overall plot. I don't think we needed that many subplots in the movie. You could have taken 2 of them out, or just have like 1 subplot and that's it. We didn't need 4 or a whole bunch of them. That just went nowhere. True, this multi-tiered approach opened avenues for character development, but the main plot of Vengeance took many detours, and that just felt skipped at times. And the rabbit hole's bottom was reached. It would end up being very lackluster, realistic, and certainly making a point, but nothing that had my eyes bugging wide. And even worse, when the exciting climax does happen, the bite just sort of fell out of the antagonist. And the thing is, there's one part of the finale that kind of just bugged me a little bit. It's when he decides to return to his old home and lure the bad guys. The town's being evacuated due to the storm, and the cops tell him to turn back, and Robert's like, I just gotta go check something's quick. And the guard tells him to make it quick, and he goes there. Although, shouldn't Robert realize he's being followed by these guys, and these guys are clearly not going to let witnesses happen, because once these bad guys get to that same point, the guard tries telling them to evacuate, and they shoot the guard dead, and they go through. I feel like Robert should have realized that that these guys were going to be following him there. So it kind of feels like a bad idea to try to be going back to a town that's about to be evacuated where a guard is. And they just don't touch up on this again. And another thing, like Robert McCall, there's not really much consequences for his character in this one. There's not really much stakes for his character in this one. And the only real epic action sequences were the opening apartment fights and the finale. And how the finale goes is Rensick and Ree head to Susan's house to kill her husband Brian. Robert helps him escape though. York and Kovac break into Robert's apartment where Miles is painting the walls, and more in the apartment via webcams. Robert drives Miles to a secret passage, then calls York, leaves the apartment with Kovac, and Miles emerges from hiding, but then, because he's told to go hide in this certain thing that's behind one of the walls, this secret area that's behind one of the walls, but he gets discovered, so he's captured by York and Kovac as he exits the apartment. And York deduces that Robert has gone to his seaside hometown, which has been evacuated because of the hurricane. Kovac and Area Resnick begin searching the town in gale force winds, and York situates himself as the town's watchover. And Robert's death. However, once the team gets there, Robert stealthily kills the team one by one, dispatches Kovac with a spear gun, and Ari with knives, and Resnick in a flower explosion trap in Robert's wife's old bakery, set off by Resnick's own stun grenade. Now by himself, York reveals that he has Miles tied up in the trunk of his car, and begins tauntingly shooting it to lure Robert out. Robert foils York's last on target shot to the trunk by shooting the car's tires. And after York gets knocked over by intensifying storm winds, Robert confronts him atop the tower and stabs him dead with his own knife. So that's how the finale goes. And that's pretty much it for epic action. Not really much happens, because this one just feels more of a dramatic movie, more of a drama movie than an action movie, unlike the first one. This one just feels more story-driven. It's not a bad idea, but still try to have some more action moments in the film. Being dramatic and story-driven is not a terrible idea, but if you're an action movie, you should still have some more action scenes. Not just be some drama about Robert bonding with some kid named Miles who's just an alright character. He's just not really that interesting to watch, and he's not really... I don't think that Miles' character was needed, to be honest, because he didn't really contribute much to the plot. But how it fully ends is not too bad, though, because back in Boston, Susan's information about Sam's painting helps Robert reunite Sam with his long-lost sister, so Sam and his sister are able to be reunited before they die of old age, peacefully. And Miles finishes painting the mural on the apartment complex's brick wall, and he returns to school and focuses on his art. And of course, Robert moves back into his old house. And he looks out towards the calm sea, and that's how the credits roll. So, in all honesty, if this scene had Equalizer 3 been a bad movie, then I would have pretended this was the ending of this series. I wouldn't have minded because Robert was finally starting to get over his past, and he was back at his old home in peace. But thankfully, 3 actually turned out to be decently good, and you'll find out in that review. So I'm glad 3 didn't turn out to be crap. But that's another review. All in all, guys, Equalizer 2 is decent, but it's just a more mixed sequel. So in the end, the Equalizer 2 is mostly just a stream online for those who like the first one, because this one just lacks the action, epicness, and charm of the first film. Anyways, that's it for my review of Equalizer 2. If you're wondering how I'm going to rank Equalizer 2, here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you are fans of the first film and want to see more of Robert McCall, then just stream this one online, because there ain't much you will get out of this movie unlike the first. If you're wondering how I'm going to rank the Equalizer 2, I'm going to give the Equalizer 2 a 6.5 out of 10. And there we go! That wraps up my review for the Equalizer 2. So now I reviewed the first two Equalizer movies. This week I'm going to eventually review the third movie. So I can't wait to do that. And so I did see the third one in theaters, and what I will say is it's definitely a step up from this, but it's not as good as the first one still. You'll find out more in that review. But until then, guys, that'll be it for this review. Thank y'all for watching. If you like this, want to see more, and don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.